Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Tim Hoven. I'm here today representing myself, along with my friend Brad Munger, who are lake friends from the Summit Lake area. Yes. All right, is that better? I wanted to come here today, and I normally do not testify on behalf of myself, but I felt really compelled to be here today to share a story that's something that has troubled me for some time. And in the last couple of years, a couple of years ago, we purchased a piece of property up in Summit Lake, and then I got to know the neighbors like Brad and others, and they started to share with me a story that I think is important for you to hear as it relates to this bill, and that's the reason I'm here today. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, starting in 2007, Summit Lake sits rather high, and there's another lake called Bass Lake. In 2007, the lake waters were very low, and Summit Lake is a feeder lake into other lakes. And I think the people in Bass Lake and other lakes were all concerned about their water level. So ultimately, what happened is that there was a persistent banging of the drums to change a culvert that went from Summit Lake down to Bass Lake. And even though that culvert was only 1 year old, there was a lot of pressure placed on the DNR to re-elevate that culvert, to actually make it lower. Ultimately, forces at will allowed that to occur, and a new culvert was put in a foot lower, which resulted in more water leaving Summit Lake. But that really wasn't enough. What then happened was still not enough water was flowing out of Summit Lake to satisfy other lake owners. What then happened was 4 people from down lake, I will say, decided to go and actually trench out the wetland area from Summit Lake which allowed the water to flow into the culvert. That is one of the reasons, and I'll allow Brad to talk a little bit more about that. And then ultimately, the riparian landowners on Summit Lake applied for a fill permit, thinking that would be a reasonable way of restoring the environmentally sensitive area. The DNR denied that permit for where the illegal activity and these 4 individuals were cited for. So that brings us to today. The concern that I have, as an individual, is the ability to dredge, when you use the word dredge, out of a lake. And it's because, again, the story that I shared with you, I'm very sensitive to that. When I heard this story, I was concerned. But I also tell you that I spoke with Senator Lasay's office and met with Representative Jarko this morning, and actually called him on the day before Christmas, and he was very receptive and understanding of the situation that I just described. And I heard Mr. Larson also talk about how rivers are treated. I think it's really important that you not allow those regulations just to be held by the DNR, but they actually need to be in statute, and to ensure that other riparian owners are not affected by a lowering of the water level, whether it's near a culvert, an environmentally sensitive area, an inlet, an outlet. I think there's a great opportunity, once you let the genie out and let somebody dredge, it'll be very difficult, as we have found, to get satisfaction and recourse once that damage is done. I do believe it's possible to work within the parameters, but everybody has to be very upfront, and you can't allow it just to be the DNR. Those parts need to be in statute. The other part of the bill, which I don't think it goes, quite frankly, as far enough, is that our situation and others are like it. When the damage has been done, when somebody does something illegal that does affect the water level, you need to do the right thing and provide a permit to restore that illegal activity. If we continue with this path right now, because otherwise you are just promoting and incentivizing people to do illegal activities. That's wrong. And the people that are most affected are those people that don't have the resources to hire a lot of people to go get this fixed. The damage is done. I'll throw it over to my friend, Brad Munger. As you can tell, I get a little bit worked up over this issue.
Chairman, committee members, I want to kind of paint a simple picture of what took place and just show you how the stupidity behind what ended up, okay? First of all, we're going into year 9 fighting this legally, okay? We're going in pushing the $250,000 in legal fees, okay? The trench is still there, okay? The trench and to fix the problem would have taken 4 hours, 2 people, to give you an idea, okay? We've had everybody involved except President Obama, okay? Literally, okay? And the trench is still there. When you look at, and to give you a rough idea, you've got probably 5, 6 lakes. Starts with Upper Clear, Summit, Deep Woods, Water Power. They're all fill overflow lakes. That's critical, okay? Because water doesn't go from one to the other unless it's full, okay? So Upper Clear has to fill before any runoff can go to Summit, vice versa to Deep Woods, whatever, okay? During the drought, some of the latter lakes, I mean, these people were down like 8, 10 feet, okay? I mean, you felt sorry for them, but it didn't rain, okay? And the upper waters didn't have any excess water to drain. Simple, that's it, okay? Mother Nature, all right? It also depends on the composition of the lake. If you've got a clay bottom lake, it holds water. If it's sand, it drains right through, okay? So what was happening is Summit Lake had a clay bottom. It was holding its water relatively well. So what happened one day, this was in October of 2007, 4 gentlemen the day before came in and dug a trench about 2 feet wide, 1.5 feet deep, 50 feet long, okay? Now to dig the trench, you have to visualize a 20-foot opening mouth to the creek. Now, when the creek average is only 6 feet wide, high water, it's probably 20 feet wide. My shoreline extended up to the mouth of the creek. They didn't go and dig a trench in the middle of the creek. They came over, took 6 feet of my permitted legal shoreline off, threw the shore riprap into the woods, okay, dug the trench, took pictures of themselves doing it, okay? So there's no question of who did it, okay? So then DNR got involved, blah, 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 okay, make a long story short. We still didn't have any more rain, okay? It was still kind of a drought. But what happened was they lowered the level of Summit Lake. So it dropped 1.5 feet, okay? In the process, the one end of the lake has got a 250-acre wetland, registered wetlands, okay? Which now is drained. It changed the clarity of the lake. We had Aries professional engineering firm come in. It actually changed the spawning beds for the fish, okay? So that's some of the results, okay? To make it even better, okay, now what happened is the water would then flow into Bass Lake. If you look back far enough, the water actually was supposed to go in Lady Lake, but somebody from, say, the lower lakes changed that some years ago, okay? And the property owners on that lake are down 8, 10 feet, and someone actually changed and redirected the water, right? So now the water goes into Bass. Bass got their water because they've got to keep the golf course green, okay? Bottom line. They are in a position now that that water has to come up to overflow to get to those lower lakes that are down 8, 10 feet, okay? Then at the end of the bottom lake, you have a small little dam, small, 2, 3 feet wide. All it is to control the outflow. And then any water that flows out goes into the bogus marsh and we feed the mosquitoes, all right? They never controlled the outlet. So if you don't plug the drain, it all drains out, okay? So that's going on at the same time. So anyway, backing up now, we had to fix this, legal action, the DNR engineering reports were done. I've got copies of it if you want to see it. And all we wanted to do is have them fix it. You know, you shouldn't have done it. It's against the law. The DNR came in, confirmed it, measured everything, okay? To date, it still hasn't been fixed. Shortly after that, in fact, we're still, after almost 9 years, going into 9 years, trying to get a jury trial to even get it out of Langlade County because of certain problems and issues. Anyway, but what happened since then, this opened the door to that culvert that was changed in 2006, they wanted to change the culvert again. So the same group of people that did the illegal trenching from that same lake brought in their engineering firm, came up with their numbers, lake bed, this, that, the whole shot, right? And said, well, that culvert that you just put in back in 2006 wasn't put in right. Even though it was signed off by the DNR, signed off by the highway commissioner, state, county, all the officials that had all the signatures needed to do that project. Okay? So they pushed, came up with their numbers, put pressure on the DNR, got the same engineer that said he wasn't going to change it, that it was approved, and got him to come into a complete 180 and say the culvert was put in wrong. When it was put in 6 inches lower than the original culvert that was there for 50, 60 years. Okay? The new one got put in 2 feet lower. The concern is if you don't have water flowing into it, the 2 feet's not going to help you. Okay? The concern is, and what we want to add to the bill is if you're going to do fill and so on and so forth, our concern with the bill would be just add some line items to it to permit dredging, small amount of dredging, okay, if it's got to fix a illegal act like this, and also a fill to fill in an illegal act. And the other key point was to establish a lake level. Because when we went through this, could you give me a glass of water? When we went through all this, the biggest problem we had was no one knew what the lake levels were. Thank you. There we go. So anyway, when you run into a scenario like that, everybody's kind of throwing numbers up in the air. Well, what's the lake level? Okay? You need to establish the lake level. If you get into some of this permitting, and you're going to permit removing 25 cubic feet here, 30 here, 100 here, whatever, okay? Our concern with that removal of the that kind of material, it's about a 300-foot stretch from the inlet of our creek to that culvert. There's a high spot in there right now. They can get more water out of there because that culvert's now 2 feet lower. If they were to come in and say, I own the 2 properties next to this culvert or next to this creek, if I were to sell it and then someone sold it to the people on the lower lake, they could literally, without rules of that, could come in and trench out, lower that down. It would drop the level on Summit Lake by almost 2 to 3 feet.
And so just to reiterate, the 30 cubic yards, again, there needs to be safeguards. You've heard that from other people testifying today, and I think it needs to be in statute. And again, in light of this situation, and this is not unique, when there's an illegal activity of drenching, since we're already dealing with this issue, I think it's important that a permit be provided to restore that illegal activity. Mr. Chairman, would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Representative Hebel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, fellows, very much for your testimony. It's very enlightening. It's very difficult what you've gone through and continue to go through. With regards to this bill, you're looking at the bill itself. Will it help your situation at all? You're testifying against it. Is there anything in the bill that we could put in to make it better for you?
Well, I think there's 2 things, Representative Hebel. One is that we're sensitive about the word dredging. We registered against the bill, but Representative Jarko and others have been very receptive, and I've heard some really good things today about the provisions by treating it similar to a stream, but I would recommend putting it in statute. But secondly, and most importantly, I think you should give a riparian landowner the permit to restore or repair, a permit to fill if there is illegal activity. That is, essentially, otherwise you're rewarding people for very illegal activity.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can you maybe enlighten me a little bit? Why did the DNR deny the homeowner's, application to repair the site?
Representative Brooks, I'll throw it to, just so you're aware, Brad Munger is a riparian landowner who actually applied, was part of the permit that applied to the DNR along with the Summit Lake Association for repairing, for that permit. And ultimately, the people that fought against that permit were the same, well, I shouldn't say the same people, the Bass Lake Association that were the beneficiaries of that water. Brad, do you have a reason why they?
What happened was is it came down to the judicial system, which handles the citations net for the DNR, had to act on it, and they weren't doing it. Okay, so they kept shoving it back to the DNR. Then the DNR and our attorney says, well, okay, we'll work with the DNR. We just want to get the thing fixed. So if they're not going to take out a permit, we will. So what do you want us to do? So I actually did the design work, drew it all up, had it okayed by the DNR, and we're going to put it in. Well, then they said, and they were getting complaints from the lower lakes. Now, keep in mind, they're still low on water. Their lakes didn't come up until the following year when we had a lot of rain, okay? So what happened was is you had, let's just take round numbers, 100 landowners on Summit. You take the other 4 or 5 lakes, you total 500 landowners. They did an opinion poll on it. Guess which way they went? They went with the 500 and then denied the permit for us. And all we were trying to do is get the thing filled in.
Representative Brooks, at the end of the day, the DNR did issue the application a denial, and for a number of reasons, they ultimately said the area will fill in. And it's been 7, 8+ years, and it hasn't filled in, and essentially it's become actually wider because it's become a navigable stream, as they say, which has been enhanced.
And just to follow up, you said you've talked to Representative Jarko. Is he receptive to an amendment regarding any illegal dredging or filling in a lake and then automatically authorizing, I guess some sort of
I don't want to characterize
restitution?
how the conversation, his position on it, but he certainly was sympathetic because he had heard of very similar situations in other parts of the state where people have done similar things, where they either didn't have a permit or did things illegally, and it certainly affected the entire, in our situation, an entire lake because of the lake level.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'd just make one comment, too, that when this was trying to go to court, when it was all done, there was probably $3,000 to $4,000 in fines per person, okay? When the district attorney finally got done with it, he fined him $100 and didn't make him fix anything. That's why it's still in the condition it's in.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
See no other further questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Next to testify, Jordan Lamb on behalf, speaking in favor on behalf of the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable